I was inspired to become a storyteller because the Orthodox Jewish community is misunderstood, and I was frustrated with the media's depictions of my community, and I knew that I could share a more authentic and nuanced story. And it's important to have things to feel proud about. It's important for us to have heroes to look up to. It's important for us to feel represented. I began to become a storyteller about my community pretty much organically. I started Jew in the City because I saw an extremism and a negativity filtered through media. My name's Allison Josephs, and this is the Storyteller Spotlight. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al natilas yadayim. There's a big confusion about what exactly the Jewish people are. Are we a religion? Are we a race? Are we an ethnicity? The best way to describe the Jewish people is probably a family or a tribe. We have ancestors that we originate from. We have a shared Jewish DNA. We are actually a Middle Eastern people that, against our will, got exiled and spread across the four corners of the earth. And with that identity, never quite feel like we belong. But at the same time, we have a spiritual practice that not all Jews observe, and Jews do not observe all the same, and yet these traditions also unite us. Being raised in the 80s in New Jersey, in a pretty quiet time in terms of the Jewish experience, my mother gave us a warning. She said, things are good today, but things were good in Germany, and things were good in Spain. And every country eventually tires of its Jews. And one day we may need to run. Now, I only recently realized that this talk that my mother had given me is actually a talk that many Jewish parents and grandparents give to their kids. And so even in a snapshot of time, if we are prosperous, if we are feeling safe, there's something that lives within many Jews of not quite feeling secure where they are. In my youth, my life took a bit of a different turn than I expected. In fourth grade, one of my classmates was murdered by her father. The father had a breakdown, killed both children and himself, and this sent me on a spiritual quest to figure out what is the purpose of my life, why do I exist. I had about 7 years of off and on insomnia and panic attacks, and at the end of this journey, I connected with an Orthodox Jewish teacher who showed me the depth and beauty of the wisdom in my traditions, of the beauty of the rituals in my traditions, and I adopted an Orthodox life. There's a lot of misconceptions about Orthodox Jews, and what I've come to see over the years is that I actually had internalized a certain shame of looking too Jewish, sounding too Jewish, being perceived as too backwards, too extreme. And the thing is that, again, when these practices are done in a healthy way, from a place of choice, from a place of meaning, these are beautiful traditions and meaningful ways of life. As I began to explore the traditions and our Jewish texts more deeply, I discovered so much beauty and so much love and so much positivity in my relationship to my heritage. We don't measure a person by the quality of their challah braid. The reason that we braid the bread for Shabbos is that Shabbos is about unity. So we unify with our families, with our friends, with God, and so the braided challah sort of represents the unity of Shabbos. Did they ever teach you that in school before? There's been a dehumanization of Jews in media in general. People only see the Orthodox community for the crooks, creeps, and extremists. All the happy and positive and meaningful stories never get told. And I started to ask myself, what could I do to change the narrative? And I thought, what if I hopped onto YouTube and told what my life as an Orthodox Jewish woman looks like to the larger world? I thought, I am Jewish, I live in the city, I will become Jew in the city.
For some reason, people are under the impression that Orthodox Jews live repressed lives.
How much does your average person know about Orthodox Jews?
Welcome to the mikvah. The Talmud teaches that the greater the struggle, the greater the reward. The more similar we make ourselves to God, the closer we become. Sincerely yours, Jew in the City.
So much of Jewish life is actually imbued with joy, and that's part of what we try to show in Jew in the City. We tackle misconceptions. We show that you can live a fabulous life, keeping kosher, traveling around the world, dressing beautifully, that we can both live proudly and strongly in our traditions and also benefit from the most beautiful parts of the world.
Mommy, we should show Sit. Good. Stay. Caution. Good boy. Good.
In the last several years, anti-Semitic attacks are rising in terms of frequency, in terms of brazenness. Our synagogues all have armed guards because of the attack that happened at Tree of Life several years ago. As there are increasing inclusion and diversity in different spaces, Jews are usually excluded from these spaces. But what we need to happen is for these spaces to listen to us, to hear how our experience is the same and how it differs, and make space for us at the table as well. One of my biggest inspirations is a Jewish heroine named Queen Esther. She was married against her will to King Ahasuerus in the ancient Persian regime. He did not know she was Jewish, and Haman, the villain of the time, was planning essentially a Holocaust. He was planning to wipe out all the Jews of the time. And she had the bravery to approach the king, who you were not allowed to approach without being asked, and tell him who she was and who her people were, and that they needed to be saved. And the interesting thing is that if I looked at TV shows and movies, I would think that Jewish women are supposed to be silent and voiceless. But I looked into my own texts and traditions, and I saw a strong Jewish woman who was willing to take on the biggest empire in the world. So I could certainly take on Hollywood, couldn't I? In the last year and a half, we've built the first and only Jewish Hollywood bureau. And quite excitingly, we're meeting with the studios. We're advocating for the fact that we also need whole characters. We need nuanced characters. We need consultants in the room to make sure that we're getting the details right and that we don't come across as caricatures, because when you don't see someone wholly human, it makes it much easier to dehumanize them. There's a lot of misconceptions about modest dress, meaning that you have to look ugly, about women being inferior to men. My husband is actually the one who gets my children ready in the morning. I think Orthodox men in some ways have been the most maligned in media. There are abusers in every community, and those are usually the ones that make the news. But I could not do anything that I have done in my life and my career without my husband's full support. He told me that he thinks that a lot of times relationships are not even, that men have more control in the relationship, and it's important that, I have a voice. I feel really proud to have started a bit of a revolution in how Orthodox Jews are portrayed in media, how Jews in general are being portrayed in Hollywood. So my parting message to the Jews that are watching is, if you don't feel proud of who you are, take some time to learn more about it, because there is a gorgeous, beautiful heritage waiting for you just to discover. And so the basis of seeing the dignity and humanity in everyone is to know who they are and where they come from. And we do that through storytelling.